ever was a time, it would be now, is all I'm saying. If there ever was a time to get on your feet and take it to the streets, 'cause you're the one who's getting played right now by the game they're playing. Come on, meet me down at the party park and say, oh, where are the youth? We need you now. Come speak the truth, come break it down. Where are the youth? We need you now. If there ever was a time, it would be now.
In every age, a technology is created that upends the foundations of society. The wheel, the printing press, the internet. Now, in a world sliding into financial chaos, a new technology is changing the way monetary systems work around the world. It is called Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a new form of money, controlled not by banks, governments, or corporations, but through mutual commerce between free individuals. To learn more, visit
bitillionire.com or bitcoin.org.
Open source is incredibly powerful. Open source is responsible for WikiLeaks, Wikipedia, Linux, which runs all of our infrastructure, for Firefox, for BitTorrent, for Bitcoin, for all of these, for encryption, for all of these real uses of tech, not the yuppie Angry Birds or silly apps that these people make, you know? Open source is also an example of how we can organize economically, an example for the future to build the products we need without needing proprietary industry, without needing the points of control, without needing masters and slaves and babysitters.
Fuck you! Fuck you!
Welcome to the third episode of the Holy Fuck Web News. I am your idiot, Paul.
And I'm Isaac.
And Isaac's also an idiot. We're idiots because we reject our men's rights. And we're going to get to that later on. But first we wanted to talk a little about this thing that just happened in Dallas. A very disenfranchised white man, 50 years old, went on a shooting rampage. You know, Isaac brought this to my attention that the Dallas Police Department was attacked by this one guy, and he actually first saw it in Al Jazeera, and Al Jazeera was misreporting it as sort of an organized attack on the Dallas police, and they almost seemed like dedicated to that line because they later changed it to at least one, and then the Washington Post confirmed that it was definitely one guy. One of the interesting things about the shooting was that it was done from a van, which apparently had like gun ports drilled into the side of it. Which is pretty.
And they left explosive devices at the scene too. I mean, it also just looked like when I saw the story 2 hours ago, like it looked like the facts were still coming out, and they weren't sure what to say. But because it said the police initially had said they thought there were at least 4 shooters. Like they didn't.
Let's point out that he didn't actually kill anyone.
Yeah, he just drove up in this armored car with like gun ports in the sides and like opened fire with automatic weapons on this police station, and then sped away. And like in a parking lot in a Dallas suburb, they shot him.
And he told negotiators that, you know, the cops were responsible for him losing custody of a child or something like that.
He told officers he blames police for losing custody of his son and accusing him of being a terrorist.
And no police or civilians were killed, and in the end a police sniper killed him, which, you know, we talk a lot about police brutality and police killings, but you know, when someone's on the loose with a gun and they're definitely shooting at people, I mean, in polite society you just don't do that, and if you die doing that, that's kind of what you can expect as a result.
I mean, people call it suicide by police. Yeah,
and you know, that's you know, I'm not gonna commend them because I guarantee they could have winded it down in some other way. That's the way they handled it, and that's, you know, he's dead. So there'll never be a trial. Yeah. Right. He definitely would have been convicted. So it would have got the death penalty most likely in Texas. They would have somehow found a way to escalate it to a statute that would have been punishable by death. So,
Right.
it doesn't matter. That was his result. Once he decided to take that action, that was his result, no matter what.
He was
I think that both Isaac and I, do support, armed revolts, but this wasn't that. At first we both suspected that maybe this was some kind of militia movement, and that this guy was like a high up in the militia, and he was able to organize some friends to go and attack the police. But that was all based on what Al Jazeera had said about there potentially being a group. I guess the message I want to deliver
like
is
an hour ago it changed to at least one, and then
yeah.
like they wanted the report.
It did seem like they wanted it to be a narrative of there being like an organized attack on the police, which is definitely more interesting than one guy trying to shoot up a cop station.
It reminds me of when Fox News actually was here in Baltimore, we started misreporting additional police shootings when they hadn't happened. Like it was after the uprising had calmed down, and they were just trying to stir shit up again. And
ratings were through the roof. They needed to bring them back to life. But yeah, definitely. I know that in the news that I report, which is Bitcoin news, and we'll talk a little about Bitcoin here in a minute. I know that bad news, that news that is negative for Bitcoin, that definitely we actually get a lot more traffic on that than we do on the good news. And also the price of Bitcoin is resistant to news either way. It seems that the big investors don't really pay attention to that so much as they pay attention to market trends. So a bad news is better than good news. It's always been the fact. Like you only ever see the fluff pieces in the news when there's no other news going on. So anyway, meanwhile in real life, or in the rest of the world, there actually was an attack on police in Afghanistan, and it was by an organized group called the Taliban. And that headline was sort of downplayed in Al Jazeera English. So I found that interesting too. I'm a fan of Al Jazeera in that they do seem to be one of the more reasonable places to get information about what's going on in America.
Definitely, yeah.
But if you're getting information about what's going on in the Middle East, they can be one of the less reasonable places.
Well,
so
that's what I was going to say. Is Al Jazeera has been linked to the Saudi Arabian state before too. I'm not sure how explicitly it is. Like, I don't think it's like Russia Today where they're like,
basically a state-run.
Yeah, they're a state-run, news station. And I have similar feelings about Al Jazeera as I do about RT. RT is a little more sensationalist, but it tends to be a really accurate place to get news about the U.S. from that you won't see in U.S. media.
They don't pull any punches comparatively.
Right.
But I mean,
But they don't report any bad news about Russia. When there were like the massive anti-Putin protests in Russia, there was like not a peep about them.
Right, and so that can be expected. So in Russia, people in Russia probably go to U.S. news outlets to get information about what's going on in Russia. So it's just like it's wherever you're held hostage is where you write the least negative news about.
Right.
And then when you're in a niche, I guess like I report on Bitcoin stuff. I guess I don't have any masters, besides the advertisers, and we've recently we had to drop one of them for being a scam, and then I wrote an article exposing their scam. So it is what it is. Depending on what you're reporting on, it really applies to where you are as to what you can say. And that illustrates the fact that as long as there are governments, there will be censorship. And we wanted, I think, to talk a little about censorship too. But first, there's a thing going on in Missouri that's kind of disturbing in a county jail, and Isaac wanted to tell us about that.
Yeah, well, I got an email from some of my friends that worked with the Incarcerated Workers Organizing Committee of the IWW and has been trying to basically organize unions of prisoners. And I got this email from them about some stuff that's been happening to their members in a Missouri prison, where there have been protests and hunger strikes against living conditions and working conditions in the prison. There's apparently there's been this huge spate of prisoners that were involved in the resistance being like misdiagnosed with schizophrenia or bipolar disorder or like all kinds of things, and they've been being prescribed Hewadol and Thorazine at like just for totally inappropriate made up symptoms as a way to pacify people, and the prisoners organization is calling it medical torture and trying to expose it. But I'm looking at this Facebook page right now where there's all these letters from people about how they're being given prescription drugs against their will, and so I think that's kind of like a holy fuck thing that they're like they're using antipsychotic meds basically to put down a prison rebellion, and I don't know. I think that like it's a notable story in itself, but I think it also raises some some questions about like what the role of like medication and pharmaceutical medication in general. I think a lot of it is designed to pacify people and
reduce prisoner resistance or the possibility of it.
I mean, reduce resistance in general, possibility of resistance in any aspect, any area of society, and so there's this private prison company, Horizon Compliance, that's doing this. So I guess the prisoners.
Or is it Corazon?
Maybe it's Corazon. It's spelled Corizon.
Yeah, I think that's like a Spanish surname.
Well, Corazon, maybe. Yeah. Well, in any case, it's a prison operating company that's also been tied to scandals in Allegheny County. It's my understanding, where they killed their employees killed 6 prisoners last year and 4 prisoners this year.
That's in Pennsylvania, Allegheny County.
Right, in Allegheny County Jail, Pennsylvania. So,
well, I mean, I've been to jail numerous times, and I've seen perfectly sane people that were forced to take, Thorazine and other antipsychotic medications. So, I know they do use it as like more of a calming agent than as an actual thing to help people. But I mean, I guess we really want more information about this. So, if anyone listening has a better resource than what we've been able to come up on, but basically it seems like this is evidence to me that the state definitely fears that, the obvious, that if the prisoners were to organize, they could either, force better conditions for themselves, or they could potentially overthrow the establishment inside the prison or the jail, and
as happened at Attica and at Lucasville and at other prison riots about. I think they like one interesting thing that like has happened in in the situations in the prison hunger strikes in Pelican Bay and also in Alabama and Missouri recently is that like there has been an element of like gang truces or truces. Right,
where they say there's a new race and that's inmates.
Right, or like right, and then they have like this, so because and part of the like the jail, the prison administration's like counterinsurgency strategy has to be to like get the racialized gangs fighting again and get the gangs killing each other again, because they're
well, they need them divided.
Right, and they use that as
and they'll do it down to the individual. If they have the resources, they'll separate everyone into their own cells. They'd love people to just be alone all the time.
Right.
Like, that would be the ideal, because then everybody's separated from everybody else. But that's just untenable in terms of the resources that they're allocated, and and the number of prisoners there are.
Yeah, I'm reading a letter from a prisoner in the SECC building in Charleston, Missouri. It says all here that are rebellious are being placed on what they call wobble head status. They are just diagnosing people left and right to cram meds into them. They call us bipolar, delusional, manic depressant, schizophrenic, or just plain crazy, so what we're saying can be dismissed as gibberish because we're mentally ill. Then the ones who are refusing to cooperate are being placed on forced meds, and there's no stopping that. The name's been censored from this letter. It says, name, tried to refuse to no avail. A team was called, and they forced a needle into him. Where's the due process? Another offender named the same way. The side effects are taking a toll. Some dudes can't read because their eyesight's out of commission. Mind's too discombobulated to even think clear to facilitate thoughts for a cognizable letter to their family. Then not just the forced meds, they're making it impossible for people to contact family. All our properties being confiscated. Nothing. It's still on paper, but obsolete in the prison system because they will silence you. So I guess this is where the information's coming from. There's like 5 or 6 letters on here from people, all of the SECC, that are reporting the same thing. I hope we get some.
Basically, what it comes down to is if you're bad enough that you can't function in society, if you're a child molester, if you're just an uncontrollable murderer, things like that are the case. Society should deal with you by ridding itself of you. I am saying that prison caging people as a form of punishment is ineffective, and it doesn't reform anybody. It doesn't make people more socially compliant. It doesn't improve society. So
and that's not what prison is for in the U.S. anyway. Like we have more people in prison in this country than anywhere else in the world.
And it's a profit. It's an industry.
Like there's 2.2 million people in prison here, and I think there's like another 5 million people on top of that who are on probation or parole. So that's 7 million people total that are like wrapped up in the penal system somehow. I mean it's like 1 in 35 people in this country. Like that's
right.
that's like it's insane. That's more people in jail than fucking like North Korea has in jail. I think like part of it is that it's an industry and people profit off of this, and part of it is that like this is how they control people here, and like this is like there's like there's like cops in schools now, and like increasingly like arrests happen in school, and so something that would be dealt with by your teachers, your principal in the past has led to like immediate arrests automatically, and like this is just how they control a redundant population now. It's like
right.
So I don't know.
So prisons. I mean, you should support people that are in prison for what I would call more socially acceptable crimes, like people that are in prison for dealing drugs, people that are in prison for defending themselves, people that are in prison for so-called assaulting a police officer. Like if you support someone going to jail just for hitting a cop, then you support the idea that a cop's authority is absolute. I mean, a lot of times people are just defending themselves from cops.
There was kind of a cool book by an ex-cop a while ago that came out. It was called In Defense of Flogging, and it was about like corporal punishment in public, like beating people or flogging people in public, and the history of this, and then how much worse the prison system has gotten since since those forms of punishment were abolished, and like now we have so many more people in prison, and he blames like all these liberal reformers who a lot of whom were like Quakers, and who invented the idea of solitary confinement as a way for people to like get rehabilitated, and now of course it's used as a torture technique and a compliance technique, but it was like really just this indictment of all like the liberals who invented the prison system today, and like the technocrats that built it, and I think and his argument in the book, which is like a little tongue-in-cheek, but the argument is that you should give people you should like reinstitute flogging as a form of punishment, and give people the option of like either like going to prison for 5 years or just receiving 40 lashes at one time and being done with it. And this guy was saying that like like if he were given the option, he would take the 40 lashes, and like, who are we to deny other people the same choice, you know, and like condemn people to years of physical and sexual abuse in prison when we could just like whip them in public like we used to, and you know, and it would
Right.
save
Well, I
taxpayer
mean,
dollars and everything.
any reform has to come with a serious questioning of the judicial system and what is illegal. You know, like there's so many normal behaviors that can potentially land you in jail. You know, even in New York, you know, just selling cigarettes can get you killed. Like,
Right.
you know, like so many things that a rational person would never say, you know, let's spend millions of dollars incarcerating someone for, can literally, that can be the the result.
Right.
So anyway,
Did you hear about that fucking like Lithuanian-owned pharmacy in Parkville or in Pikesville outside of Baltimore last year? They got arrested for like trafficking millions of dollars in cigarettes. They were like they were buying cigarettes in Virginia and selling them like on the black market in Baltimore.
I didn't realize. I guess if you were selling them en masse, then you would you'd be able to profit. But the taxes are pretty high everywhere these days. You know, places you'd be surprised. They're actually more expensive here in our. I almost said Afghanistan. Here in Arkansas, they're actually more expensive here in Arkansas than they are in California. You know.
In the future, that should just be like a thing we do on this podcast, like. To pretend Paul lives in Afghanistan,
Yeah.
or just like drop hints that, you know, like, oh well, I was drove into Kabul the other day, and
Yeah, I was going to Kabul.
yeah,
I had a mask on. You
Right.
know?
yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
So, you know, in a serious holy fuck moment, a man who had a penile transplant.
Yeah.
A South African man who had a penile transplant has now impregnated his girlfriend.
and
Now,
he's
he
going
was
to be a father, and we're very happy for him.
he was the first successful penile transplant in history. Little backstory: his penile transplant happened as a result of a heinously failed circumcision that he had at age 18, which cut down
the
his
article
penis
said
to
a
1
circumcision.
centimeter.
Yeah, circumcision that left him with a 1 centimeter penis. I don't think that's called a circumcision. I think that's called having your dick cut off. You know? That's not like what's a centimeter?
It's not.
You can't even pee with that. That's like,
Well, not successfully. Just get it all over yourself, really.
oh my god, dude.
So, you know.
But my other favorite thing in the article was like when it said that the team of surgeons had determined South African men to be the most in need of penis transplants, and
Right, because of ritual practices that take place.
Because of ritual genital mutilation. Okay, I guess that makes sense. Seemed like a funny way to judge populations by funny criteria though. Like I think, you know.
I think there's other populations that could use some transplants.
I would have thought the only population that would require penile transplants are men without penises. But
Well, another interesting thing about the article is that they said that the paternity of the child hadn't been determined yet, like kind of insinuating that maybe he cheated on her. I mean, she cheated on him, and it's like, but at the same time, they never had thought that his like fertility was in question. Just that, you know, his penis wasn't able to like get far enough in really to fertilize an egg. And it's interesting that he had a girlfriend when he had no penis. You know, good for her.
Yeah.
You know,
But
it's very, very accepting. More accepting than I think
anyone would be.
girlfriends.
Anyone I know. Yeah. Wow.
And
I wonder what their relationship was like before then. You know.
probably probably more reasonable, honestly. Take the sex out of it. Relationships between men and women can be a lot more reasonable.
They didn't necessarily never have sex. It's just,
The types of sex they had were different.
Yeah, but like, I don't know, man. Like,
Well, so talking about relationships between men and women, let's talk about. Well, first let's talk about censorship on Reddit and if that's possible.
oh god,
So, okay, look, fucking, let me just make my position clear, and I think Isaac agrees with me, but of course, he's free to tell me to fuck myself, but I think that censorship is a real thing. I think it happens everywhere in the world that there is a state. We were talking about it earlier, how kind of the press self-censors itself depending on where it is. And, censorship in the case of like North Korea can go down without even printing anything. Just spreading an idea that would be unfavorable to the state can get you killed. Like that's real censorship. And there's recently the most popular website on the internet, which is Reddit, started banning a few select, well, not a few, like hundreds of subreddits, which anybody can start a subreddit. That's kind of been its thing it's had going for it all along. And the subreddit is like a community dedicated to this or that idea. And one of the subreddits that got banned was fat people hate, which
and it was just like horrible shit,
literally just shit that was like trying to drive overweight people to kill themselves. And Reddit decided that they weren't going to, foster that anymore. Now, the question we have here is, because this word is being thrown around willy-nilly, but like I kind of just define censorship as something pretty serious. It can have legal or real implications in your life. You can go to prison. You can be killed. Edward Snowden was censored for a lot of people censor themselves when they sign non-disclosure agreements. And censorship is real. And there's people that are talking about these communities losing their subreddits, that they're being censored. And the question is, do you think that they were censored, Isaac, or do you think that Reddit used its rights, which is to only, display content that Reddit approves of, really, and since they own the whole fucking thing, that's kind of their right, do you think that they were censored?
I think objectively speaking, it's not censorship, You can kick somebody off your website just like you can kick somebody out of your house.
For any reason, you don't.
And I also agree that it's important to keep some perspective here and to, to look at things in a matter of degree and to, like, be careful about drawing, grandiose parallels between, like, something happened on the internet and, like, the real, often mortal consequences of people, of
speaking against the state,
yeah, like somewhere else. So like, I agree that there's like a question of degree and a question of perspective, but even on top of that, even without any of that, I think it's just objectively not censorship. Like you can
because they're still free to speak.
Like
on their fat people hatred, they can start their own.
Start your own fucking website and say whatever you want. Like you're not. Reddit is not the U.S. government. They don't have to, like, they don't have to allow you free speech on their website. Just like, I don't have to fucking allow you free speech in my house,
Right. If you're saying something in my house I don't like, I can kick you out for that. Like, I don't have to explain it either. I can just say, you gotta go. And that's the same thing that Reddit did. And, that there's a lot of people bandying around the word censorship, and it's kind of disgusting to me because it weakens people that have really been censored, like in the USSR for a long time, like in Cuba, North Korea, China, the United States. I mean, people that speak against real power, real authority, they can lose their lives for it.
Right, and I think that, like, so it's really kind of like a first world problem that we get to whine about being censored on the internet, for you.
Is it inconvenient, and are they kind of selective about who they... I mean, yeah, like this one guy who was a fat person, he pointed out that, they didn't go far enough in it. Like, they left a subreddit called Coontown, which is clearly racist, and like that should go too, and I mean, there's
I think though, like Reddit's official policy, what like the admins said they were doing was actually pretty admirable. They said they wanted to promote ideas while protecting people, and not and not censor anyone for voicing a particular opinion, but they wanted to like silence people who were harassing other people.
or at least like, and yeah, there's subreddits that are dedicated just to fucking with other subreddits, like, and I loathe the terms.
Sure, it's fucking Reddit. There's all this, it's like
I loathe like terms like fat acceptance and stuff, and like I'm fat, like I'm not a skinny person, I'm not fit by any stretch, like, but at the same time, I loathe the term like fat acceptance. Like, I don't think that it should be something that is so discussed so often. Like, honestly, like, if someone doesn't accept me, that's their problem, like, whatever. Like, I'm not like wheelchair fat or whatever. Like, I don't have a mobility scooter.
Yeah, I don't really like when people talk about. I mean, I'm
like, it's so first world. Like, there's so many real acceptance issues that this society has. Like,
yeah, I mean, it's basically a health problem, and I don't like it being ranked on the same order as like other kinds of identity politics, as if being fat was like integral to who you are or something.
Right.
It's like like it's not the same thing as like racism or sexism or whatever. It's just like
exactly.
It's a health problem. I agree, but it's not like it's also not something you have to like tolerate there being a subreddit
dedicated to hatred
to hating people.
Either. Like that's not really what Reddit was for. Aaron Swartz was I guess you'd call him an SJW, a social justice warrior. And I wanted to talk about that term. Like, what's wrong with being a fighter for social justice?
I mean, I would never use that term just because, I mean, it's basically a pejorative created by people on the internet to badmouth anybody who cares about social justice in general, which is like hugely fucking. I mean, I don't know.
It's most often used by fucking MRAs, men's rights activists, which we started out the episode by saying, we're guys that kind of reject that whole movement, and we're both white guys who probably benefit from, without knowing it, fairly often from the system that these guys, are trying desperately to preserve.
Right. Sure.
It's like
my own opinion is that everyone is worse off in a patriarchal society. Like,
everyone's worse off whenever the rights of anyone else are denied.
Right, and I do think that like women experience like special oppression that we don't, but like the fact that like my sister and my mom and my female friends aren't safe walking the streets at night in Baltimore.
That makes everyone less safe.
Like, that makes everyone less safe. They're not.
And when the cops are allowed to kill black people, that makes white people less safe.
Right. Absolutely. That's everyone is worse off because of these things, and I think that what the real tragedy here, what all these idiots are missing, is that the women's liberation movement has always offered a framework for men to talk about how men are oppressed, and it's not.
They've made it. They've even.
Yeah.
Like.
It's not like men are the bad guy. Like, it's.
It's like that the system is not fair enough to other groups, so that's what they're really attacking. And yeah, sure, there are plenty of feminists who take a wrong tack on it, and they push an agenda that really makes no sense even for their own benefit, and they should be addressed appropriately. But to just dismiss feminism as a whole, or to really these are like knuckle draggers, is what I think of whenever I think of like MRAs. Like, these are people who long for a time that never actually existed. Like, when
they all. That's another thing about them, is they all have they all like Joseph Campbell for some reason. Who wrote that book about like mythology or like the and like or what's it called, like the mythopoetic men's movement, and like they all like to talk about how like men are hunters and like they used to hunt the woolly mammoth together, and like we have this manly bond that like but like
Being
this
fucked
just
with,
really
yeah.
it's like really ridiculous shit. Like they have these like epic fantasy stories in their heads like about what masculinity is or what the role of men used to be. And these are fucking like pasty-faced basement-dwelling internet nerds in America, like who have never fucking like hunted elk or like
Who think
what the
they're
fuck,
being
you know?
censored when Reddit says they violated their policies. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
like they have this fake nostalgia for a time
It's like
that they
kick me off
never knew
Reddit.
and never actually existed. Yeah,
It's like kick me off Reddit or Facebook, and I'm gonna be like, thank you. Now I can do something productive with that time I was wasting. Like any
out of
rational
all the
person
fucking
will
things
not
you
be
want to get
bothered.
outraged about, that's what you're going to get outraged about. Like
Right, and you look at the men's rights subreddit today, and one of the top things is about how the fat people hate going away is going to affect all of the other, particularly hateful communities on
because
Reddit.
it's going to diffuse all the other all the fat haters out into the wider public in Reddit instead of segregating them in their own subforum,
Well,
or because they're gonna, or that's not.
it's really about how like MRAs are next and how it could apply to any subreddit at all, and that's of course false. Like
Oh god,
Bitcoin
so they're gonna
subreddit.
be even more self-righteous than regular now. They're gonna be fucking.
It's like the Bitcoin subreddit, for instance, is very much about talking about Bitcoin, negative or positive. It's not about hating. It's not about like 90% of the threads are not hatred of banks and traditional money. It's about Bitcoin. So like
Right.
that's what Reddit is for communities that are devoted to particular issues to talk about them. And hatred of anything is not an issue. That's a feeling that if you share it with someone else and then you develop a community around that, what's the end result going to be? It's going to be some kind of violence. I mean, hatred leads to violence. Like, and especially when you surround yourself with people that are unquestioning of that hatred, like it's going to lead to some kind of, potentially violent, or in the case of the fat people hatred type thing, it leads to suicide. Of like they troll people to death, literally. Like
They know that they fucking do. Like that's what like 4chan and fucking the dark corners of Reddit. Like that's where this shit breeds, and like they fucking. Like, oh my god, this shit's terrible. I don't even.
It's like an echo chamber of evil, really. Like there's no redeeming quality.
I don't even want to think about like the fucking friends of mine that are betards and have like waste so much time on fucking 4chan and like take pride in being able to like remotely harass people. Like it's fucking pathetic, dude.
Yeah,
Like, but yeah, there's all these. You hear all these horror stories every once in a while. About
I would feel sleazy if I even like go to 4chan. Like
yeah, and
if I even
you hear
like
these
look at
stories
their
about how,
page,
like some like poor kid with Asperger's or something that like killed himself because he got harassed on the internet. Like, I mean, like these people are shit. It's like I don't know.
all the things you can spend your life doing.
Yeah.
Like there's people, like some of us devote ourselves to lost causes, and we're just kind of ticked that way. Like our brains work that way. Like it doesn't matter if I'm not going to succeed, I'm still going to push towards an agenda that that my life, that I would feel happy living in,
Sure.
And like there's plenty of us out there that, aren't going to give up on the, I guess, social justice cause, no matter how things change in society, no matter how much the pendulum swings back against us. Before the security state really rose up in America, actually, interestingly, was when we had the most, we were doing the best, So it's like, I don't know. I think that there's a lot of things you can spend your time doing, and when you lose. And when this happens and like that people hate goes away, like we should just be, they should be graceful about it. Like why do they think it's such a like Reddit was in their right. They should have known this was going to happen any day. Like,
Yeah, I mean, the people could just be like, "Oh, I guess I need to grow up and go outside now," but instead you're gonna get self-righteous about it and fucking have that be your cause.
and they're violating your free speech, or they're censoring you. Like, bullshit. If you're listening to this and you were one of those people, like, fuck you, bro. Like, come at me. Like, I'm a little heavy, but I'm fit enough to kick your ass. You pasty-faced little fuck. So another thing. It's not really a Reddit phenomenon. It's more of an internet phenomenon, and it definitely wouldn't have happened prior to the internet. There's these people that call themselves, men's rights activists. They're like fighting for the rights of men, and like one of them that really made the news last year was this guy named Elliot Rogers, and he was a 22-year-old virgin, which is, I guess, I would say that's uncommon, but like he went on this rampage, killed a bunch of people in LA because he couldn't get laid. Basically, it was really what it comes down to. And he had this manifesto, which Isaac is going to quote from. And
I need to pull that up. Okay.
And
hold on.
And he did this manifesto, and he made this video like shortly before he went on his rampage, and he was a very self-involved, privileged kid, and it seems to me that like all of these men's rights activists are very similar. Like, they are sociopathic. They don't care about other people. They don't believe that other people have rights. Like they don't question the power structure. They only question why it's changing and why they're benefiting less. And the fact is that to this day, a white male has the best time in America. Like, it's just the way it is. And
his story is called "My Twisted World: The Story of Elliot Rodger" by Elliot Rodger. It's it's just, oh my god, it's ridiculous. Like, it's so kind of like naive and saccharine how he writes it, and like, he's totally self-important, totally self-involved. He said it's split up into sections. Like part 1, A Blissful Beginning, age 0 to 5, and where he talks about how nice his childhood was, and he thought the world was good and pure, and
his favorite movie was The Land Before Time.
Right.
Like, it's like, who gives a shit, man? Is this a manifesto or what? But later on, it gets a lot darker. And he describes the situation where he made a girl really uncomfortable at a party, and he got his ass beat for it. And that's when he started hating sexually active males along with women. Like,
basically,
he was like,
for having more enjoyable lives than he did. Yeah.
Like, and if sex is like heroin. Like, if you haven't experienced it, you don't know how great it is. And I guess.
But it's also not like the be all and end all of human existence, like you were just saying. Like,
No, there's plenty of people who choose not to have it. Like, there's people that voluntarily are celibate.
Like, once you've had sex, you're like, oh, that was okay. That was kind of awkward. Now my back hurts, but
But very few people like. But very few people, like, it becomes like their driving force in life. Like, everything you do is to get sex. Like, if you live that way, you're not enjoying life as much, nor are you enjoying the sex as much, I would say. So it's a thing that humans do, but it's not all we do, and he should have taken a moment to be introspective and said, what am I, like, how am I approaching these girls wrong? Because certainly there are women in the men's rights movement, first of all, and there are women who like a guy that wants to be, the decision maker or dominant, or however you put it. There are plenty of women like that, so he should have really asked himself what he was doing wrong. Certainly he was going after women that had no interest in him, in his personality type or whatever. So, but rather than do that, he develops this philosophy of hatred and moves on and goes on to to kill people. Like, he started out by slitting the throats of 3 people in his apartment building, and then he goes and kills 3 girls at a sorority. And none of these people, I think, had directly been his enemies. They were just part of the problem as he saw it. And his father was like some kind of movie producer or something like that. But quote a good section from his manifesto, real quick.
You mean like one of the hateful parts at the end, or I
Sure,
was just
sure.
reading it? I mean, I was just reading the start. The I haven't gotten that far actually. You showed me today.
Well, yeah.
But no, okay. But look, this is ridiculous though. Like because like the first line is, all I ever wanted was to fit in and live a happy life amongst humanity, but I was cast out and rejected, forced to endure an existence of loneliness and insignificance, all because the females of the human species were incapable of seeing the value in me. This is the story of how I, Elliot Roger, came to be. It is like
no, that's not why you were unhappy.
Yeah.
You were unhappy because you're privileged and spoiled, and you thought that things are just gonna cater to you.
Right. I mean, the kid was pretty fucked up, but like to blame. I mean, I just hope all those sorority girls are happy, like maybe if one of them had sex with him, like this wouldn't have happened. So, really it's their fault, I think.
Obviously.
For ignoring him sexually, yeah. No, but I mean, I think that is like an extreme example of like where this kind of like men's rights activism propaganda leads. Is like, like that's the result of it. Is this? I mean, and I think it's not hard to figure out like what these people's deal actually is. Like, there's men out there that just straight up hate women. like these are people that campaign for like the right to not pay your child support.
That's one of their goals. Yeah.
Yeah, like I mean, I mean, it's just ridiculous. Like, men are still absolutely privileged in every element of society. But there was an interesting article last month. It was in The Economist, and it was written from I thought like too sympathetic a viewpoint to these people. And it was kind of a sensationalist article. It was called "The End of Men," but it made some interesting points about how, like, it was claiming that while men still cluster at the top and still make more money than women in the same jobs, and are the CEOs of companies and heads of organizations and stuff still tend to be men. But it was claiming that men also cluster in the bottom, and that uneducated men are now worse off than uneducated women, and like most jobs are. And I think that there's a kernel of truth to that, in that you've seen like a lot of like feminization of the workforce in the U.S. As like like housekeeping jobs and nursing jobs and hairstyling jobs and other like traditionally female working class jobs have become more common, and like skilled trades and like heavy industry and construction jobs and stuff have become less common, and traditionally masculinized jobs. And but like I don't see that as like the oppression of men by women. I see that more as like an
capitalism
example.
having its
exactly that's
its way with the economy. Yeah.
Right. I mean, if anything, that's like
globalization at its best. Those
right.
jobs are existing elsewhere. Then it's not that they're not existing; they're just being moved away.
Right. So, and really, like, this is an example of how like the gender order hurts men too, and like the existence of patriarchy in our society isn't good for anybody, and like that's an example of a way that patriarchy interacts with the economic circumstances, with to disenfranchise a class of men. It's not. So I don't know. I think that if men's rights activists understood, or first of all hated women less, and were you know, more educated on the subject that they're talking about, like they would see that feminism has always offered them a methodology to talk about how men are oppressed, and that they, you know, like it's a tragedy. Like these are guys who would really benefit from feminist methodology and practice, I think.
From understanding what women's rights groups are really driving at, which isn't, you know,
Right.
women are driving for rights because they don't have any, or because they didn't have any, you know, traditionally, and moving forward they've gained some, but not enough to make a difference. And
Right.
yeah, I think it's important that they understand that, like, true feminists, they support the equalization of everyone. Not, you know, they're not just trying to bring up women necessarily. Like, that's not the only goal. And
Right. But
yeah, so
I think one like part of the subtext when you're talking to these people is that you know, I think like they're not just a reaction against feminism. They're also like there's also this like sexual entitlement that's always the subtext of what's going on, and that was like really what was going on with like the Elliot Rodger kid, right? Is that like, you know,
definitely.
he felt entitled to sex, like it was something that like women owed him, and like and like the most oftentimes like they don't like they fixate on certain kinds of feminists or certain, you know, or certain ideas within feminism. Like they don't talk about like, you know, I mean, what I mean is that there's like I think men's rights activists like to talk about like feminism as the cult of victimhood, I guess, or and to talk about what am I trying to say? Like I guess like issues related to rape and sexual assault in particular, like that they
And they definitely like to downplay those
right.
things.
Like they like to downplay those things by talking about it as if it's a culture of victimhood, as if those aren't real problems. These are just feminists obsessing about them. Like any kind of feminist organizing related to, you know, like related to sexual assault seems like what gets these guys the most worked up, and you know, and I think that's really related to this like, you know, this culture of sexual entitlement that surrounds them. I mean, I think that's what feminists would call rape culture, too. Where, you know, and it's and
Well, definitely. I
not
mean,
because they advocate rape or anything, but just because it engenders a situation where men feel entitled to take whatever they want, you know. So I don't know. Like I had a friend of mine, childhood friend that I've known since I was like 6, who you know is pretty misogynistic now, and got started flirting with like men's rights groups on the internet, and I got really pissed off at him, and you know, yelled at him about it the other day because fucking I
I
don't
didn't
know.
realize that
It's
was that
just
recently.
it's just so it was like a few months ago, not the other day, but
Okay.
he's like yeah. But I mean I don't know. I think it's just this. It's as ridiculous as like I mean I obviously like white supremacy and white nationalism is a much like older problem, and you know like organized as a serious ideological movement. I think like this is honestly just the same thing. This is a reaction by a small group of privileged people that want that see their you know
Privilege withering.
see their privilege withering and being threatened, and they're you know they cling to it because like I don't know. I guess they don't have anything else.
It's
Like
sad, and I just wanted to bring that up because, you know, it's really a holy fuck moment for me to hear people call censorship being kicked off a website. You know, it's like
yeah, like
if
it's
something as
ridiculous.
serious as censorship has been reduced to that, like,
Yeah, let's keep some perspective here, you know? It's fucking like, you know, or like try going to fucking or you know, like they're complaining about censorship and then hear about what happens to feminists in like the Arab world. Or like my god, like there are people who are, you know,
mutilate.
yeah, there are people like in Egypt who are literally like mutilated for like stepping into the public sphere and like trying to, you know, to just participate in like the civic and political life of their country somehow. Like yeah, like people like that's my god, like that's censorship, you know.
Yeah, and
like
the censors, you know, were literally if you go to the etymology of the word, it it stems in English from a moral police, basically, who are out there to find people who are acting so-called immorally and to punish them with state power. And that's what we have today in other parts of the world, and we still have it in America as well. But now it's expanded beyond morality to just be anything that challenges the state.
Absolutely, yeah.
But if I own a website and you post something on it I don't like, it's my right as the person providing that resource to delete it. It's pretty simple.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
I'm not censoring you by doing that. I don't have the authority to stop you from expressing that viewpoint anywhere. I just am saying go express it elsewhere.
I mean, I think it's interesting that like Reddit and Facebook and Twitter are so widely used that they, that like people see them as like a public space, like they appear to people to be part of the public sphere, and then these morons get, like get excited about getting banned from them. But really, they've never been part of the public sphere. They've always been owned by private companies, and like those companies have always been able to do whatever they want with the information on them. Like that's how Facebook makes its living.
That's just the way it is. Like, and if you don't like it, don't use it.
Right. I mean, it's not. Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
So,
I don't necessarily like the implications of like living in a world where everybody mediates their social life through Facebook, but I also don't think it's censorship. I mean, I think there's a big difference between like moderation on an internet forum and fucking
censorship.
Actually having your free speech restricted. Yeah.
Right, like you still have the right to go and start your own community, which I'm sure they will. Or there's competitors to Reddit that are now seeing a boon because they're going to accept fat people hate and whatever you call it. But I wanted to bring that up. I thought it was really important to, I only ever discovered Reddit really when I came to Bitcoin, and that was just because I wanted to, that's a good place to learn about Bitcoin is the Bitcoin subreddit, and it's a good way to keep a pulse on the community. And I wanted to ask you, being someone who knows very little about Bitcoin, there's an ongoing debate within the community, and it's not really a debate. It's there's a few obstructionists within the development section of it who want to prevent the increase of each block from 1 megabyte to 20 megabytes. Now, the benefit of doing that, of increasing, will be that we can process a lot more transactions at one time.
Okay. And what would the drawback be? Or what are they scared of?
Well, honestly, the drawback isn't there. Because they're not going to immediately go to 20 megabytes. They're going to, over time, 20 megabytes gives us a much higher ceiling, and people will be able to get their transactions confirmed a lot faster.
So what's motivating the obstructionists to interfere with it?
It's a profit motive. They think that people will pay higher transaction fees if they have to, if miners are only confirming from people that will accept, they're only taking the highest bidder. They think that the miners will make more money, and that will be good. And that will be good for Bitcoin as a whole. But I think that the solution should really be an increase in block sizes combined with a minimum fee. Because people can still send free transactions where they pay no fee to the miners, they pay no fee to anyone, and those transactions may get confirmed slower, but they still do. And I think that we need to rid ourselves of this idea that transactions are free. The creation of Bitcoin is very expensive, and the confirming of blocks costs money too. So there's no reason to expect to send money for free. It's just that it's significantly less than what it costs to do it in other ways. So I think that
that sounds reasonable to me. Yeah, I think.
The vast majority of the community. You're kind of far away from the mic.
Sorry, I was leaning over.
But But a vast
Yeah,
majority
like-
of the community wants to see the increase happen, and then there's a very small segment that don't. And I think that, I think it hurts the perception of Bitcoin from the outside. And so I
mean,
want
and it sounds to me like the only thing that, the only people who could benefit from keeping it the way things are Bitcoin miners who might stand to make more money that way. But I mean, with the fee thing, is that just your idea, or is that like a solution that's being put forward?
Well,
by
no,
people
like the
in
people that
development?
want to increase the block size are not necessarily proposing anything to satisfy the detractor element,
Right, they're
which
just
is,
gonna do it.
and that's a problem. I think that their concerns should be addressed too. But at the same time, if you've watched the debates, it goes like, the people who want the block size, they address all of the concerns, and then the people who are against it, they kind of are like, okay, well, what about this? They're not really approaching it scientifically. They're approaching it kind of philosophically, and it's murderous really to the image of Bitcoin. And what they don't realize is that if Bitcoin becomes this niche thing that we can't do, mass adoption, we can't process at the level of Visa or Mastercard, then that's all it'll ever be, and the price of Bitcoin will systematically devalue as a result, and interest in Bitcoin from other sectors will also go away, and it'll only ever be this small thing, and if that's what they want, then really why should we consider their view at all?
Right. Yeah.
And so
Yeah, I agree. It was interesting. Last episode we talked about Bitcoin a little bit, and about how it's it's a better bullion currency than gold because there's an absolute scarcity of it. Eventually, like Bitcoin's gonna run out, and there's gonna be like all the Bitcoin that there ever will be will exist. And the same is not true of gold. Like, I mean, maybe at one point it was, but now, like, we're gonna start mining asteroids in the
Right.
future, and there's there are companies already who are like, they're like asteroid prospecting companies that are already looking into doing this, and even though it's only in like the very early experimental stages, like,
and that'll catastrophically tank the price of gold.
right, like even if all the gold that was ever in the ground in the U.S. was mined, like we're gonna start, like there's gonna be more of it. Like,
Right.
yeah, it's not gonna be valuable. It's just gonna be like another pretty metal. But I
Well,
think
it's not just pretty; it's useful. Like it's in almost everything I'm looking at. Like all these electronics make use of
Right.
gold, and
it's
that's what it
useful
should
now.
be.
Yeah, I mean, it's a useful. It'll just be another natural resource with like stripped of its like mystical properties that
I don't necessarily think that money should be based on something that should be used in daily life. Like I don't think that gold should be
Right.
so expensive since it has such wide applications for humanity.
it used to be that gold that gold wasn't useful except as bullion, and it made such good bullion because of that. Like, it was easily identifiable. You can't mistake it for anything else. It's like, it's malleable. You can make it, cut it into any shape you want. Like,
Right.
it's pretty. Like, it's like it made good. It made good Bitcoin. IRL before Bitcoin, but like.
Right, and so I mean, there's other digital currencies that are solving. There's what used to be called Darkcoin and is now called Dash. They've gotten ahead of this thing, and they've now implemented like a self-governance strategy where their so-called master nodes, which are people that are heavily invested, it's about a minimum of $2,000 you have to put in, but they already make some of the transaction fees, and they have an instant transaction network, which is another problem for Bitcoin. So they can confirm instantly, and like they're just as cryptographically secure, if not more. And also they now the master nodes will vote on issues like this. So if the block size issue became an issue for Darkcoin, they would simply have a vote via the masternode network, and that would be the end of it. Like, it wouldn't be this long drawn out philosophical war, you know. And I think I think that maybe eventually Bitcoin will be displaced. There's a lot of people that talk about its network effect and how it's already the one that everybody wants and it doesn't matter what anybody else does. But, like, that's what Yahoo thought too. Like, they thought that they were irreplaceable, and then Google comes along and destroys them.
Right.
So, network effect has been proven to be technologically a false premise. Just because everybody's using you today does not mean that you'll be the number one tomorrow.
Sure.
And Facebook was proof of that. I mean, there's just endless examples of the first is not always the best, and does not always maintain dominance forever. And so, yeah, I think that we've got a lot. I just hope that this block size thing comes to a resolution soon, because it won't be long. And some of the opponents say, well, even if it turns out we need this block size increase, we could do it in a couple of weeks. Well, don't they realize that a couple of weeks of sustained situation where people are having to wait, as long as a day to have their transaction confirmed, that's just murderous in PR. Like, you're going to have the mainstream media saying, Bitcoin does not work in a massive way. And here we have proof, because, I just tried to send a transaction. I even paid a fee, and I'm still waiting for it to go through. Like, you don't want that. Like, that's going to tank the price, because the actual fungibility and value of Bitcoin goes away when you say, when other people look at it and say, well, that's not useful at all.
Right.
So they're not willing to pay $200 for it anymore. They're not even willing to pay $10. So you'll just see a systematic murder of the price, in that 2-week period. Or it would probably, and the other thing is with software development, it never takes as long as you think. It always takes longer. So, yeah, I think that they're being foolish in every way, and we need to be as conducive to new people as possible. But I'm always on the lookout for something better than Bitcoin. I'm involved. I've done some development for one called Woodcoin that's more interesting to me. And I think I'm like the 17th largest holder or something. But
right.
Like, there's definitely room for improvement. And I think that people that are opposed to it, they're just being silly. So I just want to...
Because you just used the word fungibility, not to change the topic entirely, but may I?
Sure.
I'm sorry. You were saying something. Say something.
No, go on.
Okay. Did you read that that there was like a study that Randall Munroe did, who does XKCD, of all the it was like all the words on the internet that are preceded by the word fucking, and like fungible was one of the words that was never preceded by fucking. Annoying was always like, lots of people are fucking annoying, that was like through the roof. So, like, nobody had ever said, like, dude, these commodities are fucking fungible. So like Randall Munroe put it on the internet for the first time, like saying that, like, I don't know.
That's great.
Another one was Pequent, I think, had never been preceded by fucking.
That's fucking Pequent.
That's fucking Pequent, yeah.
Now we need to make an episode that's dedicated to destroying that whole thing.
Yeah, now we've done that. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
So fucking fungibility.
Fucking fungibility, yeah. Bitcoin.
Fucking XKCD.
Yeah, man.
Fucking guy. Yeah, alright. Right on. Well, I think we've reached the logical limit of people's attention span in the 21st century, Isaac. What do you think?
Yeah, how long has it been?
I think we're about an hour in or some shit.
Yeah, I think we should sign off.
Alright, well, signing off for the Holy Fuck Web News. Oh, thank you guys. Thank everyone that has torrented the episodes. Thank everyone who's listed on our website and is telling their friends. We do appreciate it. We'll try to come in.
You guys are awesome.
We'll try to come more into the 21st century with a Twitter feed of our own maybe, or some shit like that, but we really don't give a shit. in the end. We're just having fun, and we feel like there's some things out there that make you go, holy fuck. So we want to bring them to your attention as often as possible, which at this time is the 1st and 15th of every month. You tune in here at holyfuck.ninja. Thanks, Isaac, for your time as always, and
Thanks, Paul.
you have a good day, everyone.